Someone stole my wallet. The shout cut through the busy Manhattan sidewalk like a sudden crack of thunder, stopping conversations, halting footsteps, and pulling every pair of eyes toward the same place at once. And there she was. A young homeless girl standing beside a dented streetlight, holding a dark leather wallet in both hands. For a moment, the entire block froze. The billionaire who had shouted, "William Carter," stepped forward from the curb beside his sleek black sedan, his tailored coat sharp against the cold October wind. People recognized him instantly. In New York, men worth billions had a certain gravity to them, the kind that made crowds part without being asked. But right now, his attention was locked on the girl. Phones quietly lifted into the air as bystanders began recording. Someone whispered, "She must have taken it." Another voice muttered, "Look at her." Of course she did. The girl heard every word. Her name was Maya Johnson, 23 years old, wearing a faded gray hoodie and sneakers that had long since lost their color. She hadn't eaten a real meal in 2 days. Earlier that morning she had been walking down Lexington Avenue holding a cardboard sign that read simply, "Looking for any job." Most people had walked past without slowing down. Some didn't even look. That was the rhythm of the city. Invisible until you became suspicious. But 10 minutes earlier, something had changed. Maya had noticed the wallet lying near the curb beside a storm drain, almost hidden between the yellow paint of the crosswalk lines. When she picked it up, it felt heavy. Inside were crisp $100 bills stacked thick enough to make her breath catch. Nearly $8,000. Enough for a room. Enough for food. Enough to breathe again. For a long moment she had stood there staring at it while taxis rushed by and the city roared around her. No cameras. No witnesses. Just her and the money. The thought crossed her mind like a whisper, no one would ever know. But then she saw the name stamped on the black metal card inside the wallet. William Carter. CEO. Carter Dynamics. One of the most powerful tech billionaires in America. So Maya closed the wallet. And she walked. For city blocks through cold wind and impatient crowds until she spotted the man climbing out of the black sedan. Now here she was. Standing in front of him. Surrounded by strangers who had already decided the story before hearing a single word. William Carter's voice lowered, calm but sharp. "Is that my wallet?" The crowd leaned closer. Maya slowly stepped forward and held it out with steady hands. Carter opened it. The cash was still there. Every dollar. Every card. Nothing missing. The billionaire looked up again, studying her face as if trying to understand a puzzle that made no sense. Finally he asked quietly, "Why didn't you keep it?" And for the first time, the girl everyone assumed was a thief answered him. The question hung in the cold Manhattan air for a long second. William Carter stood there holding the wallet, his eyes fixed on the young woman in front of him as if the answer mattered more than the money inside. Maya Johnson did not lower her gaze. She had learned a long time ago that when the world already expected the worst from you, looking away only confirmed their story. Her voice was calm, steady, almost quiet compared to the restless noise of the street. "Because it is not mine." A few people in the crowd shifted uncomfortably. One man lowered his phone slightly. Another person whispered something that sounded like surprise. Carter glanced down at the thick stack of bills again, flipping through them slowly as if double-checking reality. $8,100 bills. Every one still there. In his world, money moved in numbers too large to count. Millions wired in seconds. Billion-dollar deals signed over dinner. But honesty like this was something else entirely. Something rarer. The billionaire looked back at Maya, studying the worn sleeves of her hoodie and the cardboard sign leaning against the streetlight behind her that read "Looking for any job." The edges of the cardboard were bent from being carried all morning. The marker ink had started to fade from the cold wind. He noticed the small details people usually ignored. The careful way she held herself. The fact that she had not asked for a reward. Not even a thank you. She had simply returned the wallet. Carter closed it slowly and slipped it into his coat pocket. Around them, the tension that had filled the sidewalk a moment ago began to soften into curiosity. A black SUV idled beside the curb while Carter's driver watched quietly from behind the wheel. Finally Carter spoke again, his voice lower now, less like an accusation and more like a question he genuinely wanted answered. "You said you are looking for a job." Maya nodded once. "Yes, sir." "What kind of job?" She hesitated, not because she did not know, but because the truth sounded small compared to the towering glass buildings around them. "Any honest work," she said. "Cleaning, serving tables, stocking shelves. Anything that lets me stand on my own again." The words were simple, but they carried the weight of months of struggle. Carter could hear it in her tone. Behind them the city continued its endless motion. Taxis rolled past. Pedestrians hurried along the sidewalks. The tall mirrored towers of Midtown reflected the pale afternoon sun across the street. New York never stopped moving. Yet for a moment, standing there beside the curb, the richest man on the block seemed to be thinking very carefully about something. He turned slightly and glanced toward the entrance of a towering glass building across the street. Carter Dynamics. His company. Thousands of employees. Hundreds of departments. Endless systems designed to run like clockwork. Then his eyes returned to Maya Johnson. "You walked for blocks to give this back," he said slowly. "In this city most people would not cross the street." Maya gave a small shrug. "My grandmother used to say character is what you do when nobody is watching." Carter studied her for another quiet moment. The wind rustled the cardboard sign beside the streetlight. Somewhere behind them a traffic light changed and cars began to move again. Then the billionaire did something that made several people in the crowd lean closer to hear. He reached into his coat pocket again and pulled out a sleek black phone. And without breaking eye contact, William Carter made a call. William Carter held the phone to his ear while the wind moved quietly through the tall buildings around them, the sound of traffic humming like a distant river through Manhattan. The crowd had not fully dispersed. Some people still lingered, pretending to check their phones while listening closely. Maya Johnson stood where she was, unsure whether she should leave or stay, her hands folded loosely in front of her hoodie as if she did not want to draw more attention than she already had. Carter spoke into the phone-in. A calm voice that carried the quiet authority of someone used to being obeyed. "Hello, this is William Carter. I need someone from Human Resources to come down to the front entrance of the building." There was a short pause as the voice on the other end responded. Carter glanced briefly toward the glass tower across the street. "Yes, right now," he said. "There is someone I would like you to meet." He ended the call and slipped the phone back into his coat pocket. For a moment neither of them spoke. The afternoon light reflected off the tall windows of Carter Dynamics, scattering pale gold across the sidewalk. Maya shifted slightly, unsure what the billionaire intended. People like him did not usually stop their day for someone like her. In the past few months she had learned that quickly. Most doors closed before she even reached them. Carter looked toward the cardboard sign leaning against the streetlight again. The simple words were still visible even from where he stood. "Looking for any job?" He nodded toward it. "How long have you been searching?" Maya answered honestly because she had nothing left to hide. "About 3 months," she said. "I lost my apartment when the restaurant where I worked closed down. After that things moved fast." Carter listened carefully. In boardrooms he often heard rehearsed answers, polished explanations shaped to impress investors or clients. Maya's words were different. They were plain, unfiltered, the way people spoke when they had no reason to perform. "And you have been sleeping where?" he asked. Maya glanced down the block toward the subway entrance before answering. "Sometimes the train station waiting area. Sometimes a shelter when there is space." She said it calmly, as if she were describing the weather. Carter studied her face again, not with pity but with something closer to respect. The city had tested her and she had not allowed it to take the one thing that mattered most. Integrity. Across the street, the revolving doors of Carter Dynamics turned slowly as employees moved in and out of the building. A few moments later, a woman in a navy business coat hurried across the crosswalk toward them, her identification badge swinging slightly from a lanyard. She slowed when she reached Carter, clearly surprised to find him standing on the sidewalk instead of inside his office 30 floors above the street. "Mr. Carter," she said politely, catching her breath. Carter gestured toward Maya. "This is Maya Johnson," he said. She just returned something valuable that she could easily have kept. The human resources manager looked from Carter to Maya and back again, trying to understand the situation. Carter continued, his voice steady and certain. "I would like you to talk with her about a position in the company. Something honest. Something that gives her a real start." The woman nodded slowly, still processing the unexpected request. Maya felt the moment stretch in front of her like a door she had never imagined opening. Only an hour earlier she had been standing on the same sidewalk wondering if anyone would even read the sign in her hands. Now the most powerful businessman on the block was offering something far greater than spare change. Carter met her eyes once more. "You said character is what you do when nobody is watching," he said quietly. "Today the city happened to be watching. And I believe that deserves an opportunity." The human resources manager introduced herself as Laura Mitchell, and although she maintained a professional smile, the surprise in her eyes was impossible to hide. Situations like this did not usually happen on the front sidewalk of a billion-dollar technology company. They happened inside conference rooms, after scheduled interviews, with carefully reviewed resumes. Yet here stood Maya Johnson, a young woman holding nothing but a worn hoodie and quiet dignity, while the company's founder himself had personally asked that she be considered. Laura looked at Maya kindly and gestured toward the glass tower across the street. "Why do not we step inside where it is warmer?" she said. The wind had picked up slightly, swirling along the avenue between the tall buildings like a reminder that October in New York did not wait for anyone. Maya hesitated for half a second, glancing at the revolving doors of Carter Dynamics. The building rose nearly 40 stories into the sky, its reflective glass catching the pale afternoon light. Only a few minutes earlier she had been standing outside with a cardboard sign, unsure whether anyone would even acknowledge her presence. Now she was being invited inside. William Carter noticed the hesitation and spoke gently. "You earned this step," he said. "Go ahead." Maya picked up the cardboard sign from the streetlight and followed Laura across the crosswalk. The lobby of Carter Dynamics was vast and bright, filled with polished marble floors and soft overhead lighting that made the entire space feel calm and orderly. Employees moved through the lobby carrying laptops and coffee cups, their conversations low and focused. When Maya stepped through the revolving doors she felt the warmth immediately, and with it a strange mix of nervousness and disbelief. People glanced at her as she walked beside Laura Mitchell, their curiosity obvious but respectful. They knew the building's founder had just walked in moments earlier behind them. Laura guided Maya toward a seating area near the elevators where a few modern chairs surrounded a low glass table. "Please sit," Laura said kindly. Maya sat carefully, placing the cardboard sign beside her chair as if it were still part of her identity. Laura took a moment to study her before speaking again. "Mr. Carter does not make requests like this lightly," she said. "So I would like to hear your story directly." Maya nodded slowly. She explained about the restaurant job she had lost when the business closed, about the rent that became impossible to keep up with, about the weeks spent searching for any kind of honest work while the city rushed past her every day. She spoke clearly and without self-pity, describing each event as simply as possible. Laura listened carefully, occasionally nodding as she took mental notes. What stood out was not only the difficulty Maya had faced, but the way she carried herself while describing it. There was no bitterness in her voice. Only determination. After a few minutes Laura leaned back slightly and folded her hands. "You know," she said thoughtfully, "many people would have kept that wallet without thinking twice." Maya gave a small smile that held both humility and quiet strength. "Maybe," she replied. "But then I would have lost something more important than money." Laura nodded slowly, understanding exactly what she meant. Through the tall glass windows behind them, the busy Manhattan street continued its endless motion. Taxis moved, people hurried past, and the same streetlight where Maya had stood earlier was now just another small detail in the city's rhythm. But inside the lobby of Carter Dynamics, something entirely different had begun to unfold. Laura stood and gestured toward the elevators. "Come with me," she said. "Let us see where a new beginning might start." The elevator doors opened with a soft chime, and Maya Johnson stepped inside beside Laura Mitchell, the quiet hum of the building surrounding them like a different world from the noisy Manhattan street she had stood on only minutes earlier. The elevator walls were polished steel, reflecting the city skyline through the tall lobby windows as the doors closed smoothly. Laura pressed a button labeled Floor 12 and the elevator began its gentle ascent. Maya held the strap of her worn backpack with both hands, her cardboard sign now folded neatly under her arm. She could still feel the strange weight of the moment settling in around her. Just 1 hour earlier she had been standing outside hoping someone might offer her a few hours of work. Now she was rising through one of the most powerful companies in the city. Laura noticed the way Maya quietly observed everything around her, from the floor numbers lighting up above the door to the soft instrumental music playing overhead. "You are probably wondering what happens next," Laura said with a reassuring smile. Maya nodded slightly. "A little," she admitted. Laura spoke gently, her tone both professional and warm. "Mr. Carter built this company on a very simple belief. Technology changes the world, but character builds the future. When he sees someone demonstrate integrity, he pays attention." Maya listened carefully. The word integrity echoed in her mind because it reminded her of her grandmother's voice, the same voice that had guided her choice when she found the wallet earlier that afternoon. The elevator reached the 12th floor and the doors opened into a bright office space filled with rows of desks, glass meeting rooms, and large windows that overlooked the moving river of traffic far below. Employees glanced up briefly as Laura and Maya walked through the office. Some recognized Laura from the Human Resources Department, and a few looked curiously at Maya, wondering who the new visitor might be. Laura guided her into a small conference room with clear glass walls and a round wooden table in the center. Sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating the skyline of Midtown Manhattan in the distance. "Please sit," Laura said, pulling out a chair. Maya sat carefully, feeling the smooth surface of the polished table beneath her hands. Laura opened a slim tablet and began asking a few simple questions about Maya's past work experience, her education, and the skills she had developed while working at the restaurant before it closed. Maya answered honestly, explaining how she had managed evening shifts, handled customers, and helped keep the small team organized during busy hours. Laura listened with interest, occasionally nodding as she entered notes into the tablet. After several minutes she set the tablet down and looked directly at Maya with a thoughtful expression. "You know," Laura said slowly, "most interviews begin with a resume. Yours began with a choice." Maya looked slightly confused. Laura continued with a small smile. "The choice you made on that sidewalk today told us more than any resume could." Outside the conference room the office continued its steady rhythm of quiet conversation and clicking keyboards. Inside the room a new possibility was beginning to take shape. Laura folded her hands on the table and said, "There are several entry positions in this building. Front desk reception, operation support, office coordination. They may not sound glamorous, but they are honest work and they often lead to greater opportunities." Maya felt a mixture of relief and disbelief wash over her. For months she had hoped only for a chance to stand on her own again. Laura leaned slightly forward. "But before we talk about which role might fit you best," she said thoughtfully, "there is something you should know." Laura Mitchell paused for a moment, watching Maya Johnson carefully as the quiet office activity continued outside the glass walls of the conference room. The sunlight shifting across the polished table made the moment feel strangely calm, as if the entire building had slowed down just long enough for this conversation to happen. Maya sat quietly, her hands resting together while she waited to hear what Laura meant. Laura leaned forward slightly and spoke in a thoughtful voice. "The reason I asked you to come upstairs is not only because Mr. Carter asked us to consider hiring you," she said. There is something about the way he makes decisions that most people do not see. Maya listened closely. She had never imagined she would be sitting in a corporate office hearing how a billionaire made decisions about anything, let alone her future. Laura continued slowly, choosing her words with care. About 10 years ago, when Carter Dynamics was still a much smaller company, Mr. Carter was once in a situation very similar to yours. Maya blinked in surprise. Laura smiled gently at her reaction. Not exactly the same circumstances, of course, she said. But he once lost something important while he was traveling across the country building the early version of his company. At that time he was not yet wealthy. He was just another entrepreneur trying to survive in a competitive world. Maya leaned forward slightly, curious. Laura explained, he dropped his laptop bag at a train station in Chicago. Inside it were his only prototypes, business plans, and months of work. If that bag had disappeared, Carter Dynamics might never have existed. Maya could almost picture the moment. A busy train station, thousands of strangers moving through the crowd, and one small bag holding someone's entire future. Laura continued, her voice steady. A janitor working at the station found the bag. Instead of ignoring it or taking the electronics inside, he tracked down Mr. Carter and returned everything exactly as it was. Maya felt the weight of the story settling in her chest. Laura nodded slowly. Mr. Carter tried to give him money as a reward, but the janitor refused. He simply said that doing the right thing should not require payment. Maya recognized the words instantly. They sounded very much like something her grandmother would have said. Laura rested her hands on the table. Mr. Carter never forgot that moment. He told us many times that the janitor did not just return a bag. He returned the future of this company. Through the glass walls, employees continued working at their desks, unaware that a small piece of the company's history was being shared in the conference room. Laura looked at Maya again, her expression warm but serious. Since then, whenever Mr. Carter sees someone demonstrate the same kind of integrity, he believes it deserves recognition. Not charity. Opportunity. Maya absorbed the meaning of the word slowly. She had not returned the wallet expecting anything. In her mind she had simply avoided becoming someone she would not respect. Laura gave a small encouraging nod. So when Mr. Carter called human resources from the sidewalk, I knew exactly what he meant, she said. Maya lowered her eyes briefly, still trying to process how a simple decision on a street corner had led her here. Laura continued gently. That is why this conversation matters. Because sometimes one honest choice opens a door you never knew existed. She paused for a moment before adding one final sentence that made Maya sit up a little straighter. And today, Maya Johnson, that door just opened. The word settled in the quiet conference room like the final note of a song that had not yet finished playing. Maya Johnson sat still for a moment, absorbing what Laura Mitchell had just said. Somewhere beyond the glass walls, keyboards clicked, phones rang softly, and the quiet machinery of a billion-dollar company continued its daily rhythm. But inside that small room, Maya felt as though time had slowed down just enough for her to understand something important. A door had opened. Laura stood and walked toward the large window overlooking the Manhattan skyline, giving Maya a moment to breathe. From 12 floors up the city looked different. The streets that had felt overwhelming earlier now appeared like thin moving lines between towers of glass and steel. Yellow taxis moved like bright dots in the distance. Laura turned back toward her and spoke in a tone that balanced professionalism with genuine warmth. There is something else Mr. Carter believes very strongly, she said. Opportunity should be given, but it must also be earned. Maya nodded slowly. Those words felt fair. Honest. Laura returned to the table and sat down again. That means if we offer you a position here, it will come with expectations just like any other employee. Hard work. Reliability. Respect for the team. Maya straightened slightly in her chair. I understand, she said. Her voice carried a quiet determination that Laura noticed immediately. Laura opened her tablet again and scrolled briefly before speaking. There is an entry-level position open at the front desk reception area on the ground floor. It involves greeting visitors, coordinating deliveries, and assisting the office staff with scheduling and communication. It may sound simple, but it is actually one of the most important roles in the building. The first impression of the company begins there. Maya listened carefully. She had spent years serving customers at the restaurant where she used to work. Greeting people. Staying organized during busy shifts. Making sure everyone felt welcome. The responsibilities Laura described sounded surprisingly familiar. Laura continued, training would begin immediately. The schedule is 40 hours a week. Full benefits begin after 90 days, including healthcare and employee development programs. Maya felt a quiet wave of disbelief again. Healthcare. Stability. A regular schedule. Things that had once been ordinary parts of life now felt almost unreal after months of uncertainty. Laura studied her reaction with a thoughtful smile. "You are wondering if this is real," she said gently. Maya laughed softly, a small sound that carried both relief and humility. "A little," she admitted. Laura nodded with understanding. New beginnings often feel that way. At that moment the conference room door opened quietly. William Carter stepped inside, his presence calm but unmistakable. The same composed confidence he carried on the sidewalk followed him into the room. He glanced at Laura, then at Maya. "How is the conversation going?" he asked. Laura answered with a small nod. "Very well. I was just explaining the reception position." Carter looked at Maya thoughtfully, as if measuring something deeper than her work experience. Then he spoke in a steady voice. "Honesty is rare in any city. But in a place like New York, it is even rarer." Maya met his eyes without hesitation. Carter gave a slight approving nod. "You returned something valuable today," he said. "Now the question is whether you are ready to build something valuable for yourself." The room grew quiet after William Carter's question, the kind of silence that made every small sound more noticeable. The faint hum of the building's air system, the distant murmur of conversations outside the glass walls, the soft rustle of papers on Laura Mitchell's tablet. Maya Johnson sat upright in her chair, feeling the weight of the moment settle around her. A few hours earlier she had been standing on a busy sidewalk with a cardboard sign in her hands. Now the founder of a billion-dollar company was asking whether she was ready to build a future. Maya took a slow breath before answering. "Yes, sir," she said. Her voice was steady, not loud, but clear enough to carry the conviction she felt inside. William Carter studied her expression carefully, as if he had learned through years of leadership that the way someone answered mattered more than the words themselves. After a moment he gave a small nod. "Good," he said simply. He walked to the window and glanced out across the Manhattan skyline, where the afternoon sun was beginning its slow descent behind the tall buildings. "This city moves fast," he continued. "People chase opportunities every day, but very few understand what opportunity actually looks like when it arrives." He turned back toward Maya. "Sometimes it does not arrive as a perfect moment. Sometimes it arrives as a test." Maya understood exactly what he meant. The wallet on the sidewalk had been that test. Carter stepped closer to the table and rested his hands lightly on the polished wood surface. "The position Laura described is not glamorous," he said. "But it is honest work, and it places you at the center of everything that happens in this building. Every visitor walks past that desk. Every first impression begins there." Maya nodded. The idea did not intimidate her. In the restaurant where she used to work, the front counter had always been the heart of the place. Customers walked in with questions, frustrations, excitement, celebrations. Her job had been to greet them all with patience and respect. Carter continued speaking calmly. "What matters here is not where someone begins. It is whether they show up every day ready to do the work." Laura Mitchell watched the exchange quietly, clearly pleased with how the conversation was unfolding. Maya looked from Laura back to Carter and said, "I will show up. Every day." Carter smiled slightly at that answer, the kind of small smile that suggested approval rather than excitement. "That is exactly what I wanted to hear," he said. He turned to Laura. "Let us begin the paperwork and orientation process." Laura nodded and tapped a few notes into her tablet. Maya felt the tension she had been carrying slowly release from her shoulders. The possibility that had seemed impossible only an hour earlier was now becoming something real and tangible. Carter walked toward the door but paused before leaving the room. He looked back at Maya once more and said something that would stay with her long after the moment passed. "Remember this," he said quietly. "You did not arrive here because of luck. You arrived here because of character." Then he opened the conference room door and stepped out into the busy office hallway, leaving Maya and Laura sitting at the table where a new chapter of her life was just beginning. The conference room door closed softly behind William Carter, leaving Maya Johnson and Laura Mitchell alone again in the quiet space overlooking the city. For a moment Maya simply sat there, her hands resting lightly on the table as the reality of everything began to settle in. The world outside the glass walls had not slowed down. Employees continued walking past with laptops and folders, conversations carried on, phones rang somewhere down the hallway. Yet inside Maya's mind, the last hour replayed like something almost impossible. A lost wallet. A crowded sidewalk. A decision that had taken only seconds. And now this. Laura watched her with a knowing smile, the kind that came from years of working with people during important moments in their lives. "Take a breath," she said gently. Maya laughed quietly and did exactly that, inhaling slowly as if she were trying to catch up with the speed of the day. "It feels like I just stepped into someone else's story," Maya admitted. Laura nodded. "That is how turning points usually feel," she replied. She turned the tablet on the table toward Maya so she could see the screen. "Let us begin with a few simple steps," Laura said. "Nothing complicated. Just the basic information we need to start the hiring process." Maya leaned forward slightly and answered the questions one by one. Her full name. Her previous address before losing the apartment. Her contact information. Laura typed carefully, making sure every detail was recorded properly. When Maya hesitated for a moment at the address section, Laura simply said, "You can list the shelter you used most recently. We can update it later." There was no judgment in her voice, only practicality. After several minutes Laura finished entering the information and tapped the screen. "All right," she said. "Now we move to the next step." Maya looked up curiously. Laura explained, orientation usually begins with a short tour of the building so new employees understand how everything works. It helps people feel less overwhelmed on their first day. Maya nodded again. The idea of learning the building step by step felt comforting. Laura stood and gestured toward the door. "Come on," she said with an encouraging tone. "Let me show you where your new workplace begins." They stepped into the hallway together. The office floor was bright and modern, with open workspaces where teams collaborated quietly over screens filled with lines of code and design models. Maya noticed how people greeted Laura with small nods or friendly smiles as she passed. Laura guided Maya toward the elevator bank again and pressed the button. For the ground floor. As they waited, Maya looked through the tall window at the end of the hallway. The city stretched in every direction, busy and alive, the same city that had ignored her cardboard sign earlier that morning. Laura followed her gaze and said softly, "New York can be a hard place to start over." Maya nodded. "I know." Laura smiled gently. "But it can also be the best place to rebuild." The elevator doors opened and they stepped inside. As the car descended toward the lobby, Maya felt a quiet determination growing inside her. The uncertainty of the past months had not disappeared overnight, but something new had taken its place. A path forward. When the elevator doors opened again, Laura gestured toward the reception desk positioned near the entrance of the building. "There it is," she said. Maya looked at the desk where visitors were greeted and employees passed through every day. For the first time in a long while, the future no longer looked like a question. It looked like a beginning. The reception desk stood near the wide glass entrance like the front porch of the entire building, the place where every visitor's story with Carter Dynamics began. Maya Johnson looked at it quietly while employees passed through the lobby with quick steps and quiet conversations. Some carried laptops under their arms, others held coffee cups while checking messages on their phones. The building felt alive with purpose, the steady rhythm of a company that never truly stopped moving. Laura Mitchell walked beside Maya and pointed toward the desk where a woman in a navy blazer was finishing a conversation with a delivery driver. "That is Angela Brooks," Laura said. "She supervises the reception team." Maya watched as Angela signed for a package, thanked the driver politely, and then placed the delivery neatly onto a cart behind the desk. Every movement was calm and efficient. Angela looked up and noticed Laura approaching. Her expression brightened immediately. "Laura," she said warmly. "Good afternoon." Laura smiled back and gestured toward Maya. "Angela, I would like you to meet Maya Johnson." Angela stepped around the desk and offered her hand with an easy professionalism. "Nice to meet you, Maya," she said. Maya shook her hand, a little nervous but determined to remain steady. Laura explained briefly, "Maya will be joining the reception team pending the final paperwork. Mr. Carter personally recommended that we bring her on board." Angela's eyebrows lifted slightly in surprise. The name of the company's founder had a way of getting everyone's attention. But the surprise quickly turned into a welcoming smile. "Well then," Angela said kindly, "that means we must be doing something right today." She gestured toward the reception desk. "Come take a look at your new command center." Maya stepped behind the desk with Angela and Laura following. From this side the lobby appeared different. The wide marble floor stretched toward the revolving doors where visitors entered from the busy street outside. Security monitors displayed camera feeds from different parts of the building. A computer screen showed the visitor schedule for the day. Angela explained patiently, "Our job is simple in theory but important in practice. We greet every visitor, check appointments, help people find the right department, and make sure the building runs smoothly from the moment someone walks through those doors." Maya nodded, absorbing each detail. The work reminded her of managing the front counter at the restaurant where she used to work, except here the stakes felt larger and the environment more structured. Angela continued, "Some mornings we welcome investors, engineers, media teams, and sometimes even students touring the building. No matter who arrives, the first face they see is ours." Maya glanced toward the glass entrance again. Outside, the same Manhattan street where she had once stood with a cardboard sign continued its restless movement. Taxis passed, pedestrians hurried along the sidewalk, and the city's noise hummed faintly through the thick glass doors. Angela noticed the direction of her gaze and said gently, "Funny thing about this desk. Everyone walking in thinks the important work happens upstairs in the offices. But the truth is that everything starts right here." Laura nodded in agreement. First impressions shape everything that follows. Maya placed her hands lightly on the desk surface and felt something settle inside her chest. Only hours ago she had been hoping someone might notice her sign. Now she was standing at the very place where thousands of people would walk in every year, and her job would be to welcome them. Angela smiled and said, "What do you think?" Maya looked around the bright lobby once more and answered with quiet confidence, "I think I am ready to begin." Angela Brooks smiled when she heard Maya Johnson say she was ready, the kind of smile that came from someone who had trained many new employees and could recognize determination when she saw it. "Good," Angela said warmly. "Because the best way to learn this job is to see it in action." She walked back behind the reception desk and tapped lightly on the keyboard, bringing up the visitor schedule on the large monitor. Maya stood beside her, watching carefully as Angela explained how the system worked. Each name on the screen represented someone arriving at the building that day. Business partners, software engineers, investors, and sometimes reporters. Angela pointed to the first entry. "When someone walks through those doors, we greet them, confirm their appointment, and notify the employee they are meeting. Simple steps, but they keep the entire building organized." Maya nodded as she followed every detail. She noticed the small things that made the system work smoothly. The visitor badges neatly arranged in a tray. The delivery log beside the computer. The way Angela greeted every person with calm confidence. It reminded Maya of the rhythm she used to feel behind the restaurant counter during busy dinner hours, when staying organized meant everything. Just then the revolving doors turned and a tall man in a charcoal coat stepped into the lobby carrying a leather briefcase. Angela smiled and gestured slightly toward Maya. "Perfect timing," she said quietly. "Let us begin your first lesson." The man approached the desk with the relaxed confidence of someone familiar with the building. Angela greeted him with a friendly tone. "Good afternoon. Welcome to Carter Dynamics. How may we assist you today?" The visitor gave his name and explained he had a meeting scheduled with one of the engineering directors. Angela typed quickly, confirmed the appointment on the screen, and printed a visitor badge. Then she handed it to him with a polite nod. "You are all set. The elevators are straight ahead. Someone from the engineering team will meet you on the 20th floor." The visitor thanked her and walked toward the elevators. Angela turned back to Maya with an encouraging expression. "Your turn next time," she said. Maya felt a small spark of excitement replace the nervousness she had carried earlier. For the first time in months she was not standing outside a door hoping someone would notice her. She was standing inside, helping open the door for others. Laura Mitchell watched the exchange from a few steps away, clearly pleased with how naturally Maya was stepping into the role. The lobby continued its steady movement as more people entered and exited the building. Some nodded politely to the reception desk, others hurried past on their way to meetings. Maya noticed something interesting as she observed them. No one here knew the story of the morning. They did not know about the sidewalk, the cardboard sign, or the decision that had changed everything. To them she was simply the new face at the reception desk. Angela leaned slightly closer and said quietly, "Every person who walks in here carries their own story. Our job is to greet them with respect before we know anything about it." Maya smiled softly, understanding the deeper meaning behind those words. Outside the glass doors the busy Manhattan street continued its endless motion, but inside the lobby Maya Johnson had already taken her first step into a future she had once believed was impossible. The afternoon continued to move steadily through the bright lobby of Carter Dynamics as Maya Johnson remained beside Angela Brooks at the reception desk, observing every detail of how the place operated. The flow of visitors had increased slightly as the workday progressed. Some people entered with confident steps, clearly familiar with the building. Others paused for a moment after walking through the revolving doors, glancing around as if searching for direction. Each time someone approached the desk, Angela greeted them with the same calm professionalism. Maya watched the rhythm carefully, noticing how small gestures made everything smoother. A polite greeting. A clear explanation. A simple smile that helped visitors relax in an unfamiliar place. After a few minutes Angela looked at Maya and nodded toward the entrance. "All right," she said quietly. "Your turn." Just then the glass doors rotated again and a woman in a beige coat stepped into the lobby carrying a folder and looking slightly uncertain. Maya felt a small flutter of nerves but remembered the steady tone Angela had used earlier. She stepped forward slightly and spoke with a clear voice. "Good afternoon. Welcome to Carter Dynamics. How may I help you today?" The visitor smiled with relief and explained that she was there for a scheduled meeting with the marketing department. Maya checked the visitor list on the monitor exactly the way Angela had shown her. The name appeared on the schedule. She printed the visitor badge, handed it over politely, and explained how to reach the correct floor. The entire exchange lasted less than a minute, but when the visitor thanked her and walked toward the elevators, Maya felt something she had not experienced in a long time. Confidence. Angela gave a small approving nod. "Perfect," she said. "That is exactly how it is done." Laura Mitchell was still nearby, watching the moment quietly with satisfaction. She stepped closer to the desk and said softly, "It looks like you are learning very quickly." Maya smiled modestly. "I used to greet customers all day at the restaurant where I worked," she explained. Different place, but the idea is the same. Laura nodded thoughtfully. Good service always follows the same principles. Respect people, stay organized, and remain calm no matter how busy things become. As the afternoon continued, Maya assisted with several more visitors while Angela guided her through the small details that made the desk run smoothly. Logging deliveries. Notifying employees when their guests arrived. Answering simple questions from people who were visiting the building for the first time. Each task added another layer of understanding. Eventually Angela glanced at the clock on the wall. You have already handled your first few visitors, she said. Not bad for someone who only walked through the door an hour ago. Maya looked toward the tall glass entrance again. Outside, the same Manhattan street where she had stood earlier with a cardboard sign continued its endless movement. Cars passed. Pedestrians hurried along the sidewalks. The city was exactly the same as it had been that morning. Yet everything felt different now. Angela followed her gaze and said quietly, "Funny how life works sometimes." Maya nodded slowly. "Yes," she said. "Sometimes everything changes in a single moment." Behind them the elevators opened and a group of visitors stepped into the lobby, beginning another small wave of activity at the reception desk. Angela looked back toward Maya with a friendly smile. "Looks like the next group is arriving," she said. Maya straightened slightly, ready to greet them, feeling something stronger growing inside her with every passing minute. Not just opportunity. A sense that she truly belonged here now. The small wave of visitors entered the lobby together, their conversations quiet but energetic as they approached the reception desk. Maya Johnson greeted them with the calm confidence she had begun to build throughout the afternoon. "Good afternoon. Welcome to Carter Dynamics. How may I assist you today?" Her voice carried a steady warmth that made people feel immediately comfortable. Angela Brooks stood beside her, watching proudly as Maya checked the visitor list, printed badges, and guided the group toward the elevators with clear instructions. It was a simple moment, but it felt like proof that something real had begun to take shape. The lobby slowly settled again as the visitors moved upstairs, and Maya rested her hands lightly on the desk while taking in the quiet rhythm of the building. Through the tall glass doors she could still see the busy Manhattan street outside, the same street where the morning had begun with uncertainty and a cardboard sign that read "Looking for any job." It felt like a lifetime ago even though only a few hours had passed. Angela glanced at her and smiled. "You handled that perfectly," she said. Maya returned the smile, feeling a quiet pride that came from earning something step by step rather than receiving it all at once. Laura Mitchell joined them again near the desk, holding a small folder. "Here are the final orientation documents," she said kindly. "Your official start date will be Monday morning, but you are welcome to spend the rest of today observing and getting comfortable with the environment." Maya accepted the folder carefully, almost as if it contained something fragile. In a way it did. Stability. Possibility. A second chance. As she looked down at the document she noticed her name printed clearly across the top of the page as Maya Johnson, reception team. For a moment she simply stared at it, letting the reality settle in. Angela noticed the expression and said softly, "The first day is always the hardest part. After that, it becomes your routine." Maya nodded slowly. Routine. A word she had missed more than she realized. At that moment the glass doors opened again and another visitor stepped inside, looking around the lobby with curiosity. Maya stepped forward instinctively. "Good afternoon," she said with the same calm professionalism she had practiced all afternoon. Angela watched her handle the greeting with ease and leaned slightly toward Laura. "I think she is going to do very well here," Angela whispered. Laura nodded in agreement. Across the lobby, the elevator doors opened and William Carter stepped out briefly on his way toward a meeting. He paused for a moment when he noticed Maya at the desk welcoming the visitor. The scene lasted only a few seconds, but it told him everything he needed to know. He gave a small approving nod before continuing toward the hallway. Maya did not even realize he had been there. She was focused on helping the visitor find the correct department, exactly the way Angela had shown her. When the visitor walked toward the elevators with a smile of appreciation, Maya glanced once more through the tall glass doors toward the street outside. The city had not changed. It was still loud, busy, and full of people chasing opportunities that came and went like passing taxis. But one thing had changed forever. Earlier that day she had found a wallet on the sidewalk and chosen honesty over desperation. That single choice had opened a door she never expected to walk through. And now, standing behind the reception desk of one of the most powerful companies in the city, Maya Johnson finally understood something her grandmother had once told her long ago. Integrity may not change the world in a single moment. But it always changes the direction of a life.